What is happening, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Austin, and we've got something a little bit different today. So this is, maybe the debutante ball, we'll call this for FIOS, the coming out party. But I'm sitting down with Mr. Tom Anderson. We're going to dive into the new vision of FIOS, which admittedly is pretty wild. And I'm pretty excited to get into it, Tom. How you doing, buddy? Good to see you.
I'm good. Thanks, as always.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. Okay, so because there's been such a radical, I don't want to call it a shift, but just kind of like a widening of the scope of FIOS. Can we just start with a real basic question, like what is FIOS?
Yeah. So FIOS broadly is an AI platform, artificial intelligence platform. And so, I've been working on, the Devv Ecosystem and DevX and DevvE, for many years. And during that time also had been working on, the FIOS cryptocurrency as, FIOS played into kind of the metaverse and then later, devised types of concepts. But the original FIOS concept going way back, almost 30 years ago, was really getting into AI. And so FIOS in general is kind of a culmination of everything I've been working on over my career. And I've been working on AI on and off for 30 years. I wrote a paper in 1997 that was the origination of the name. We can get into that a little bit later. But it's been something that I've worked on for a long time. So what I'm doing now is taking a lot of things that I've been working on, like the blockchain, integrating them in with my interests in AI. So what FIOS is the world's monetization platform for artificial intelligence. And it really addresses the single biggest challenge in AI, which is monetization. The space is dominated right now by a few small entities, a few big entities, monster companies. But what I was getting at is lots of small companies are, thousands of smaller entities or projects, have great stuff, but it's hard for them to rise above the noise. So having one platform where many small entities can come together, get paid instantly through instant blockchain transactions, tie in really some innovative concepts that we've got in the FIOS architecture, just overall creates a system that I think can win.
Okay, so you gave us a really big overview there, but for a guy smooth brained a little bit on AI, right? How would you drill this down in a simple way that is going to land on people like me and anyone that's watching this? Like, what is it really? You mentioned a marketplace, you mentioned monetization. How does it look in practice?
Yeah, so you'll come to the FIOS platform and you'll put in some type of request, and just like you do with ChatGPT or Claude or Grok or Gemini or whatever, right? Any of those big, LLM engines that have been created, these massive, big black boxes. But in contrast to those, with FIOS, what you'll do is you'll come and not just enter into a text box, you'll enter, your information into an interface for the problem that you're trying to build, a solution for, right? So if you want to build a deck, or you want to manage your financials, your bookkeeping, or you need to create images, or whatever you need to do, a single text prompt isn't the best way most of the times for anything that starts to have some real complexity. So what FIOS will have is these specific interfaces across, ultimately thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of different categories of use. And then what you end up having then is as you enter your request, and again, sometimes it's through a text prompt, sometimes it's through other interfaces that you choose. It then chooses what we call an arch, which is kind of you can think of it as a project manager. The project manager spawns out a task tree that then are all the pieces that you need to solve the problem, and then all of the entities in the system, whether they're human, AI, code blocks, whatever, they do the tasks in the task tree. The arch consolidates it and orchestrates it, and then gives a final solution to the user. And the thing that's, again, particularly compelling about it is, with this type of approach, you break a problem up into smaller pieces. You don't just have one massive black box solving everything. And then you end up with many different entities, again, people, AI systems, whatever, including developers that put their AI, capabilities into the platform. Like if you need an MRI scan analysis, there's a developer that's created an AI system perfect for that, right? So they could do one of the tasks in the task tree. Everybody that does tasks along the way gets paid instantaneously, transparently, auditably on the blockchain. And so it just creates a platform, a solution where everybody can come together. And from users' point of view, then you get the best solutions because you have many different entities all coming together to provide the best solutions, including, you can use all of these big, behemoth company LLMs where they're best. And a lot of times one of them is better than others. But overall, they're massive black boxes. They have hallucinations, they've got problems. And so these smaller models collected into one big orchestrated platform ultimately is going to be a better solution. And then that's what allows also then of course the monetization. So everybody that wants to monetize their work and effort, their expertise in their own field, can come onto FIOS and take part and earn on it.
Okay, so this is wild. I need to kind of drill down a little bit with you on this, Tom, just for like understanding's sake. So let's say I come to FIOS and I want to, well, you had mentioned reconciling books, right? Or like, doing financials, right? So I go in, I type in the prompt, for lack of a better word, of what the problem I'm looking to solve. Right. I get assigned a project manager called an arch. This arch then breaks down into little individual tasks like connect to QuickBooks or, give us your cogs or whatever, what have you. And then as it breaks down those tasks, it's bringing forth what sound like AI agents that are just kind of specialized in specific topics. Is that right? So it's kind of like a marketplace of agents that are executing tasks.
That's a good way to look at the FIOS platform overall, is a massive marketplace of AI agents, but also people. Like there's places where humans still do things better than AI in many cases. AI in general, once it reaches a level of complexity, it starts to really break apart. And that's where it starts lying or having hallucinations or becomes a sycophant or, that kind of thing, right? Whereas humans are good at doing a lot of things that AI can't still, right? And so you're right. It's a marketplace and code blocks too. There's a lot of things you don't need AI or a human, right? There's things like you want to grab your report from your bank to enter into your QuickBooks. That's just a simple process a lot of times that doesn't need AI or a human. And so you can take all of these different kind of needs for any given problem and then organize them and then, do all of them in kind of the right order and end up with an ultimate solution.
Now I'm curious, and I don't know if this is maybe a sales point or what have you, but like I use Grok. Grok is the AI, it comes with Twitter. And I enter all sorts of information in there, but rarely do I have a problem that I run up against where I'm like, hey, Grok, solve this problem for me. And I'm curious, maybe with some education, I would say, oh, I didn't know this was a capability. Like it actually could be doing this for me. And I just don't think about it. Right. Do you feel like people are at the point, and maybe this is, evident in the question, but do you think people are at the point to where they're ready to turn AI loose on, do they have that level of trust with it? Turn it loose on problems that have real world consequences?
Yeah. So that's, again, when you have a platform like FIOS, I think the answer becomes yes, because the answer right now is no, because, again, AI has problems, hallucinations, and just made up stuff, net lies, that make it really not trustworthy for kind of mission critical concepts. So one of the big advantages of FIOS is that you architect a particular type of solution for a problem set that then takes into account, any kind of real world, mission critical types of needs. So for example, anything that, gets output by one AI system, you could have other AI systems within this task tree and through different phases of a solution, check and verify that things are valid. Or you can have code blocks that check and verify that things are valid. You can put, controls on different entities for access to data and access to interfaces. You could, through the process of a task tree, have a certain kind of update, then go to the user and verify Is this all look good? You want to continue? And so a good example of the system. And one thing, the more I've been building it, the more and more I've been excited about it, the more sophisticated it's gotten. I've been using AI to build all of FIOS, right? So everything in it from the ground up is AI implemented and developed and designed. And so one of the first things I did is wanted to submit a patent. And so I didn't want to put my patent and IP information onto the LLMs because it's not secure and proprietary. Actually, a pretty interesting thing on that is I brought up Windows with Grok, Claude, OpenAI, Gemini, Copilot, Perplexity, right? And I put the same question into all of them, and all of them but one said, okay, here's what you do to submit a patent and I can help you with it, right? I even said to Grok, like, are you sure? Is Grok said, here's what you do to submit a patent. If you'd like to give me more details, I'll help you out. And so I said, is this proprietary? And Grok said, no, never give me details on, on what you're doing. So I got a model on a local computer. So there's the GPT OSS-20 that you can run, on your local system. So it's one of the OpenAI open systems they've put. And so I went through a process of, I started with bullet points. I figured out the right prompts to turn those into paragraphs. I figured out the right prompts to get kind of introductions. It was missing things, so I figured out prompts as checks. And I went through, it ended up taking me twice as long as if I had just written it, but I was learning, how to develop the system itself. And in the end, what I ended up having is a full process of all the checks, all the steps that you need to do, that now if I did it, instead of being twice as long, it'd be a tenth as long. And so that entire process that I developed, just by figuring it out, would become an arch. So if you go onto the platform and you say, I want to submit a patent, for a concept, then an arch would come up and say, here's step by step, how to develop a patent. And it just saves so much time because it takes you through all the pieces. And a lot of times you don't know you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what not to ask or what to ask when you're doing things. For example, again, Grok made a huge mistake, said, give me information. Is it proprietary? Never give me information, right? Like this system won't have those kinds of problems. And then if you expand that, and I've been finding everything I do, there's every kind of task or process, there's a specific kind of process that works good for solving that particular problem. All of those become arches, and then different people can have different arches. So somebody else might say, I like starting with claims. I know a bit about patents. If I put the claims down, then that's the good starting point to build something, and that would be a different arch. And then all the arches, like all the other entities, are ranked, and the best entities and the best arches for each kind of concept end up getting ranked and presented to users, and they're always competing. So you always have this system evolving, getting better, and this will be across every single thing that people do. And so if you have a particular area of expertise, you can come on and you can build your own arch and then start earning off of it, for example.
Very interesting. So it sounds like the system itself is going to get smarter over time as people use it more.
Yeah, the system absolutely evolves over time. Every entity competes for every other entity in what it does. So I call that the category, right? And the category is going to be a vector space that you say, I want to create an image for a 3D or for a 2D match 3 game, right? There will be arches specific for that, right? And then they'll take you through step by step, ask you questions, what you need. And what ends up happening is you get this kind of optimized process that instead of spending 2 hours dicking around, going back and forth with, an AI LLM, you have somebody who has some expertise that knows what you need, that takes you step by step through, and you get what you need, including checks and verifications, removal of hallucinations, using the best LLMs or the best small models or the best whatever for whatever is needed. It's just a better way to implement things. And if you're getting into the AI space in general, the very first thing you should think is, what's going to keep me from just getting crushed? Like, why is why is OpenAI or Anthropic or Google, why are they not just going to steamroll me in months if I have any traction? And the answer here is that this is a better way to do things. This is a better approach than anything else that's going on right now. These big, massive LLM models keep getting bigger and bigger. Nobody knows how they work internally. They're mysterious, right? Nobody knows how they work any more than we know how our brains work. And so because they're a bunch of weighted neurons, artificial neurons. And so the bigger they get, the more complex and the more effort it is to be able to get them to do what you need them to do. The more effort you have to put into preventing hallucination, and the bigger they are, the more there is risk of hallucinations. So instead of that, use smaller models that are trained in a particular area that don't have hallucinations from learning legal concepts when you're only creating images or whatever, right? Use smaller models that are tailored for particular solutions, and then let that collection of many smaller models do what they do best in a system that orchestrates everything, and that is going to be a winning system. And as people learn that this is going to become the place to monetize, then more and more people join, and the more people that join, the more developers or contributors that join, the better results you get from users. Therefore users start spending more money, which becomes a better monetization platform, and you get this cyclical kind of snowball that grows. And I think again, it's the platform that can win. It's a fundamentally better approach than what even the big companies are doing. It's an approach that I think we can win over the big companies, and this is an overall more sustainable, just better approach to solve the world's problems around AI. And it again addresses the single biggest challenge in AI right now, which is monetization. So not only is it going to be the best technological approach, but it also is going to be the best place for everybody to earn money on it, which is what's desperately needed in AI right now.
So on that monetization point, and I know that's something you've emphasized a few times, and I think it's probably important to drill down on a little bit, but I'm curious, what systems are in place within the FIOS platform to hold agents accountable for actually being quality, like to doing a good job? Because when if we want to go to a restaurant, I'm going to read reviews, right? There's something that's going to say, okay, this is the place I want to go to. And if there's a competitive marketplace happening, because, somebody deploys something that's heavily used, they're obviously going to be compensated for it. So what system is going to be in place to let people know, hey, these are the winners and these guys, just shuffle them out the door?
Yeah, so that's the whole design of the platform, is to enable exactly that concept. So one of the biggest things is everybody is always competing, right? So it's a constant competition, that if you're good at creating, images for a match 3 game, right? Or if you're good at taking an output from a bank and putting it correctly into your QuickBooks system or whatever, you're going to always be, as an entity, competing against all the other entities that do that type of thing, including you could take Claude and you could have a prompt associated with it, and these big LLMs are good at these things. But I found, again, like I had that stack of 6 different big LLMs. I found some of them were good at some things and some of them were good at others, right? And so then you'll have Claude and does some tasks well. OpenAI does some tasks well. Gemini does, ChatGPT does some tasks well. Gemini does some tasks well. And then another answer to the question then is, as a lot of the process is defined by the arch creators who bring their expertise to make sure things are done correctly. And again, through my example, just the very first thing I did, submitting the patents, I kind of figured out how to assure quality. And then kind of a final thing is, like, you're going to be paying for results, right? And so if you don't like the results as a user, you'll be able to say this wasn't right, and then that goes to feeding back the system, that kind of thing. So we'll put mechanisms all the way through. And then also you have, again, the steps that do verification and analysis. And one step might be make sure these outputs from all these other AI agents don't have hallucinations. And then another step might be rank all of these outputs in a competitive sense towards this criteria, and then narrow it down to the top three. And again, all of it just happens automatically. So instead of dicking around again, with for hours back and forth with different systems, all of it's handled automatically, brings the user in when they're needed, but does these checks and verifications along the way. And so you just fundamentally, even right off the bat, is going to have the best approach. But then once you start getting the ecosystem going, you start getting people earning off of it, people are bringing more and more stuff in, it just snowballs from there. So you'll consistently have the best entities performing their tasks in the best way.
Man, incredible. And so I know this was, this is kind of a first look for FIOS. And what are the things you really wanted to emphasize about it?
Yeah. So I think one of the main things is that what I've been saying. This is a big vision. It's solving the biggest challenges in AI. It's leveraging things that we've been building for years. You can't implement a system like this where you can't manage payments instantaneously very quickly. And we have the only blockchain in the world, I would say, that can implement this type of solution. Paying AI agents at scale. So the DevX blockchain is huge. In all of this. FIOS in general, for those of you that have been following, DevvE and DevX and the whole Devv ecosystem, FIOS is going to be an S2 business, right? It's going to be built on the DevX blockchain, so that's exciting, and that'll drive value across the whole Devv ecosystem and the DevvE token and ecosystem there as well. The other thing that I think I'd like people to take away from this is as I've been describing, you can develop arches. And you can take your own expertise and put those into concepts. So arches are going to be very easy to make, right? Even if you're not technical, you can come in and just say, here's a process, and when I do it myself, I like you said yourself, you use Grok, right? There's a reason you probably have used Grok over ChatGPT. Like some of the things you did, it worked better. But as if you're thinking of it as you're building your own kind of monetization platform, you'll experiment, you'll check things out, you'll figure out where the checks and balances are, you'll figure out where there's problems and steps you have to take to remove those problems. And so all of that, just any kind of just average non-programmer can figure out how to do those processes, and you'll be able to just through a GUI lay out, here's these things, here's the prompts that you use on these steps. I want to use ChatGPT with this prompt for this thing. Just kind of plug and play it all, and then you have an arch that then solves these problems. And then anybody else that wants to then solve a request or a task they need in that category, then they can use your entity to solve it, and they'll pay you for it, right? And so I'd like to really kind of drive awareness and starting to get people involved in helping to grow everything.
This is really interesting. Just a little aside for me, when the Devvie network initially launched, I hopped on Grok and I was like, okay, well, let's see how easy this really is to work with. And I fed it the API documentation, and I'm not a coder, so I don't know how to do any of this stuff, right? It's literally just me talking to this AI. And aside from needing to tap on Nick for one thing, it had one endpoint wrong. It did it from start to finish. And it would be interesting, like it would be probably nothing to have it become an expert in deploying dApps on the Devvie network. And that's just an arch. It's just there. So that makes sense to me, the way that you just explained
that's exactly right. So FIOS as a platform would be great to build other S2 DevX S2 businesses and applications. So that's a big part of what I want FIOS to do. There's great synergies both directions, right? FIOS will use the blockchain to manage these high speed, high volume, instantaneous payments to AI agents, but it also is going to be a platform where you can solve everything that you need to solve in building your own business, building your own applications, monetizing your own efforts in AI, monetizing your own expertise that other people can tap into, those kinds of things.
Very cool. And I caught you said something earlier. You had mentioned the kind of the concept for FIOS that come about 30 years ago. I'm curious where'd the name come from?
Yeah. So FIOS originally, the concepts of it started again 30-ish years ago. And one of the things I was most interested in grad school was artificial intelligence. And at the time, AI was kind of a bad word. AI has gone through these cycles, right? In the 60s, it got real popular, and then it turned into a negative thing in the 70s. And then there were some things in the 80s where AI was used to build like chess games and stuff. And then, again, through time, there's been various things. But now it's only been the last few years that AI really, for the very first time, has been kind of solving problems that people always have wanted it to solve since the 60s. And so in the mid 90s, I was looking at what I called computational intelligence rather than artificial intelligence, because again, AI was a little bit of a negative term during that cycle of kind of AI's growth over the decades. And one thing in particular I was interested in was neural networks, and in particular evolutionary algorithms. Evolution has always been kind of a key technical area that I've been interested in. So back in the mid 90s, I wrote a paper for a class called the Neural Field Evolutionary System. And so then you start implementing in your coding, and you write a document. So the document is like NFES, Neural Field Evolutionary System overview, right? That kind of thing. So I'm taking notes. And so I just constantly started using it in my name, NFES. And so it's like, over time, I was using that word so much, I just thought, why don't I just name the company even that I'm going to create someday? So it's NFIAS, ENEFIAS. So then fast forward to 2018, we're building the first Genesis blocks of the DevX platform, and I put in a list of tokens. We had some of the original DevVe tokens, managed on a Genesis block there. So DevVe's been around for a long time. But I also created a token called NFIAS, eventually for getting into the AI stuff. Then fast forward another few years. So we have that Genesis block made. Then we're building the Quint at the time token for for the gaming side of things and the metaverse, side of things. So we had the DevvE token and the Quint token, but between the time I named it and before we were able to have the TGEs for DevvE, token generation events for DevvE and Quint, somebody else had created a token called Quint. And so I was like, well, we got to come up with a different name. And it was like, oh, well, we've got, this original Genesis block with NFIAS. But then I thought, well, NFIAS is a little bit wordy. Why don't we just use the back bit of that, and we'll just call it FIOS. So the name of the FIOS token came up really kind of through that original NFES, Neural Field Evolutionary System kind of concept. So actually on the Telegram, I had people guessing. I was like, you're never going to guess, right? Because it's NFES to the word NFES to the shortened the FIOS. Nobody's ever going to guess that, right? So for those of you that were guessing, now and so then we had the FIOS token, and then it started, kind of growing, as the metaverse and the Litcraft, which are things we're still continuing with. But then, one other thing that happened is on the dev side of things, DEVV, the Devv Ecosystem, including DevvE and everything, the team has gotten to a point where they're implementing a lot of kind of my original inventions and my original kind of designs, and it's really reached a point where we're kind of executing. So a part of my time has freed up, where I'm not as critical, like the things that I've done to really grow Dev Digital and the Dev Exchange and Devise, all that. A lot of my role in those things were early weighted, where again I was setting vision, putting patents in place, doing the inventions, but with that kind of behind us, now the team's executing on it, and a lot of the team now is moved over and is reporting to Ray, and Ray's doing a good job kind of growing everything there. And so some of my time freed up, and so it's like, well, I've had this 3-decade interest in in artificial intelligence and evolutionary algorithms and neural networks and things. And it's time really to kind of exploring it. The other thing that was happening in the meantime is we also had been obviously building the blockchain, right? So I wanted to leverage that. And then we were building the task management system. And this was kind of neat how it all came together as well. We've for the past couple of years, we've been building a system that lets people do tasks. So let's say you need an image created for a game. We would post out to like the image creation group. People would see that come out and they could take that task, and then they use that task, complete it, and get paid, on the DevX blockchain. So I've been building that for a couple of years, and it's pretty sophisticated at this point and ready to go. And then had been building that as my time's freeing up, and I'd like to get back into AI in a really more robust way. And it's like, holy shit, I could take that human task management system and I could let AI agents do tasks in it. It's like, and so then it's like, and then you could pay them immediately on the blockchain. It's like, oh my god, like, do you realize what this can become? And then I started implementing the Fias design and arches, and it's like, oh my god, this is it. This is the thing that is gonna be the future of AI. And I see this really as the main emphasis for the rest of my career. I see this as the thing that I'm gonna do, and including the, leveraging and continuing to work on DevvE and having oversight and setting some of the strategic direction, but then implementing this new AI platform. I think it really could be something that just becomes massive. And then the last bit is, again, I'm taking all of my expertise that I've been developing for 30 years, all of my entrepreneurship, all of my legal and IP, all of my, business development, fundraising, putting all of that knowledge kind of into this. So a big part of what I'm going to be doing then is I'm going to be doing a podcast where I take people through the growth of Fias from the beginning. I'm going to be using AI to grow everything. I don't ever want to hire an employee. This is going to be, I think, for the first time in history, AI has reached a point where you don't have to hire an employee. So the team is the platform, including, I still want to work with humans, right? There's a lot of things, again, that humans do better than AI, but I'm never going to hire employees again. I'm just going to build the platform, and anything that I need from here on out, across the board, every single thing, the platform is going to grow itself. So in a lot of ways, like, one way to think about what Fias is it's a robot that builds other robots, and you build one robot, and then that robot could build another robot, and then those two robots can build 4, and then you can build 8, and then you eventually have enough robots and you start having the robots, do other things. And so every single thing that I'm doing in Fias from the ground up, I'm having Fias implemented. So I had including on the Fias design, I took 3 days, that have a lot of technical expertise into it. So it's not something I think anybody could do, but, design the overall kind of server backend in a process that normally would have taken 3 months. I just did it in 3 days, had my 6 AI windows up, asked them what to do, do you use this or this or this? So the entire server system is going to be built up, by AI programming. All of the modules and the implementation of the entities are going to be built by AI. And ideally, no human will ever touch any of the code. And we have a benefit of being able to implement that kind of approach and that kind of thing by starting from the very ground up, implementing everything we need. And then similarly, from a data perspective, from kind of a access and marketing perspective, a growth perspective, and then almost most importantly, then from a revenue and a customer acquisition and a developer acquisition, all of those are going to be driven by the platform as well. So again, a robot that builds robots.
Man, I was smiling because my kids, they love. You ever see Minions? That movie Minions? Where,
Yeah.
You got the
Right.
evil genius, right? And he's got all these little minions, and I was chuckling that you were creating your minions there. Not that you're an evil genius, I don't want to, but I have a buddy of mine that says, he says, if people aren't impressed with the problem, they're not going to be impressed with the solution, right? And so, pretty soon I'm going to stop giving him credit and just take that as my own line. But
Sure.
You mentioned a few things that really, and what you said was this will be better than anything else out there. And, so there are a couple of issues that you described, right? The hallucinations, the black box problem, the lack of monetization. Can we go a little bit deeper into those and maybe impress people with the problem so they can understand why this is a big deal?
Yeah. I think a lot of people don't understand what AI, kind of really is, these big LLMs. So they are massive black boxes. And you just take a ton of data and you pump it into a ton of processing power, and you end up with, billions of neurons that have weights associated with them, that when you give an input, you get an output out. But nobody knows how those signals flow through the black box to give the output. And that's why you have things like hallucinations that even these big companies are spending literally over $1 billion a day collectively, and massive amounts of money, while you still have these problems, right? Anybody that's really tried to solve a tough problem with AI, you pretty quickly reach a point where it's frustrating, and you hit threshold and it starts lying to you. And I have some early conversations that I recorded where I said, like, you're wrong. And then they go, oh, thanks for pointing that out. You're absolutely right that I'm wrong. Here's the real answer, and it's still wrong. That kind of thing. And so these black boxes have these innate big problems with them, and it's not the kind of thing that you can throw money at to solve. And it's the kind of thing that you could throw money at to get better, but it's not the kind of thing that ultimately is going to be competitive. Like, you're not going to be able to spend billions of dollars when a system like Fias can spend a fraction of the expense and have a better, overall solution. So solving that big black box problem is a big, is probably the big advantage of FIOS over where most of the emphasis in the AI space is right now. And most people in the AI space actually agree. It's rare that I talk to somebody that really knows the AI space well that doesn't say you're absolutely right. Smaller models that are orchestrated well is going to be the way things are done in the future. But in order to do that, you have to build it in a way that can grow. So I've developed a very innovative way to be able to implement these things across the board, from arches and entities and the fitness function scores across them, right? So again, like, the architecture is good, but it also is leveraging key pieces like the blockchain, that can manage the payments at scale. So despite kind of advantages that are coming from a small project, we've got advantages that will take years for others, even the big companies, I think, to really kind of replicate. And this is the type of situation where small companies, every big company will start as a small company, right? These are the kind of situations where big companies are locked into a particular kind of implementation and way of thinking and way of doing things. And that's when small companies are able to emerge and ultimately become dominant and become, big companies. I think another of the big opportunities and big implementation aspects of this that's positive is the integration of humans. Humans do things better than AI a lot of times. So building a system from the ground up that originally was designed for humans, then we can do this with AI agents. It still works very well for humans. So that's a big part of it. So I think it's a well designed system in that sense, that no matter what level of complexity AI is able to do stuff, you always can have humans coming in and doing the things they do. And, eventually maybe, AI reaches a point that it can do everything, and you have even robots that can handle the physical side of things, but that's a ways out, and so, and the system accounts for that longer term vision, but also the reality of where we are shorter term. I think another thing that's really compelling about our, the FIOS approach versus other things is this arches concept. That's one of the most valuable aspects of the patent, I would say. And the idea that you come into a platform and you want to make a deck, right? To present. So that was another thing that I did. One of the very first things, I submitted the patent, I built a deck, built a website, worked on the logo. I used AI to help with all of that. But you kind of find limits around what the current AI systems can do. A lot of those limits then are lifted when you create a process that's well thought out by somebody who understands how to solve the problem, and that turns into an arch. So you come in and you say, I want to create a deck. Creating a deck from a text prompt is a stupid way to do it, right? That's not a good way to implement things. Creating a deck from, you fill in kind of these fields, you maybe choose from some look and feel from some images. And again, you can kind of imagine, what are the things that in the deck I want to create? What kind of prompts do I need to hand off to AI so that it can take it from there and run, and get things implemented and going. So the arches is, and the specific user interfaces that we bring to, solving problems is, I think, a big part of the system.
Man, we talked about a lot of information there, Tom. So I think we talked about it in a way that not only gave it high level, but really broke it down. I mean, it made sense to me, and I think it probably made sense to everyone that's watching. And I'm curious, the one thing we really didn't talk about, but kind of hinted or implied at, was where's the FIOS token in all this? I'm making the assumption of payments, but I wanted to ask you the question point blank.
Yeah, so that's one of the most important parts of the entire project then is FIOS is capital F, capital I, capital A, capital S, right? So the FIOS token is the implementation of the monetization. So when you want to do tasks or you get paid, by art, the entities get paid by arches, that all happens through FIOS. And we'll make it easy to use from a user interface perspective. If you have a stable coin, it'll get turned into FIOS behind the scenes. But FIOS is going to be the money that runs AI. And I believe this platform can become the world's monetization platform for the AI space, for the AI industry, which would mean that FIOS would become the money of AI. So the vision overall, again, kind of coming back from the origins of things I've been working, DevvE is the money of money. DevvE we've designed as the way to exchange and implement financial transactions, between two parties that want to, exchange assets and not work through middlemen, that kind of thing. And FIOS I see as being the money of AI. So big visions for both of them. And I think FIOS has been perceived as, a subset of DevvE. And, to this point, I think to some extent, potentially was because the platform, and DevvE had to grow. But FIOS as a platform is a massive vision with huge competitive advantages and an approach that, again, I think can win right now. And having the cryptocurrency and the token associated with that, it's its own thing at this point. So FIOS as a token is a big vision. It'll pay for AI. So again, the money of AI.
Well, and I think anyone watching that's been around for a while will probably have these same questions. So I want to ask, I know that FIOS had an integration or was going to have an integration with Litcraft, with Devise, right? Those were some utility that the token already had. Are those going away and only doing this, or are they continue the same, utility that's always been there is still going to be there plus this?
Yeah, so we're going to continue with the Litcraft metaverse. Everything we've been developing there is going to continue. It's going to get expanded though. So we're going to use AI in a lot of the Litcraft games and the metaverse interactions. We're going to apply it to user generated content. We're also going to continue with everything we were doing with Devise, right? So using FIOS in liquidity caches, earning on lending, using it for an intermediary for all of the liquidity cache concepts in Devise. All of that is still there. So I have a white paper drafted, and the white paper includes, kind of all of the past stuff that we do and how it ties in with the new AI engines.
So Tom, you mentioned a white paper. You showed me the website. I'm curious, kind of, what are the checklists of what people can expect when it comes to FIOS? Like, what's coming next?
Yeah. So with FIOS, again, from the beginning, everything is built with AI, and we're building the tools in FIOS that will allow us to build everything we need for the FIOS business. Right. And so that's important. And so, like I said, the robot building, the robot types of concepts. And so as we start getting all of the initial things going for building the company, those are going to be tools that anybody else can use to build their own company. And also I'd like for people to see the path of the FIOS company, see how it's grown, see from an experienced entrepreneur's point of view what it is to start from the ground up. So I'm actually going to be starting a podcast that I'm going to take people play by play, everything that happens with the FIOS company. I'm going to take people through, this is how to build a business, right? And I think people will, I like to think that people will enjoy that journey, with us, whether they get involved with creating arches or get involved using the platform or whatever. I think it'll be a nice kind of journey to just watch as well. And I think it'll be good for entrepreneurs. One of the first things I did as an entrepreneur was I read a book about another entrepreneur that started his own business, and I was a budding entrepreneur. I loved it. I loved seeing somebody with experience that had some success success, that grew some things. I love seeing that as I was getting going. So I'm going to present that as part of what we're doing with FIOS. I've already built, the website, the logo, the white paper, all of those I'm going to be putting out soon. And then one of the main things I wanted to describe to people, two last things. One is then we're going to be integrating with the task management system that we've already built and the blockchain, and the designs of FIOS are pretty robust, so it should go pretty quick. So I'm going to be implementing kind of a first, proof of concept, with FIOS itself. And I'd also like to start working with people that can bring their expertise in for, building arches and getting involved in monetizing their expertise and their activities on a platform, again, that I think could become the de facto standard for monetization in AI, and getting in early, establish yourself with some of those initial arches, I think could be really lucrative. And I love our community that been working with for almost a decade now, and I love the hustle that people have in the crypto space in general. So I think it's a match made in heaven, and would love to grow it all together.
Awesome. Well, Tom, I know you have a hard stop coming up, man. So I appreciate you taking the time to break all this down. I hope everyone enjoyed this video, the vision, and what's coming next. So we'll go ahead and wrap it up there. My name's Austin. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Thanks again, Tom. Catch you on the next one. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Appreciate it.